वीर्यवान् सौभद्रो द्रौपदेयाश्च सर्व एव महारथाः अस्माकं तु विशिष्टाये तान् निबोधद्विजोत्तम नायका मम सैन्यस्य संज्ञार्थं तान् ब्रवीमि ते भवान् भीष्मश्च कर्णश्च कृपश्च समितिञ्जयः अश्वत्थामा विकर्णश्च सौमदत्तिस्तथैव च अन्ये च बहवः शूरा मदर्थे त्यक्तजीविताः नानाशस्त्रप्रहरणाः सर्वे युद्धविशारदाः अपर्याप्तं तदस्माकं बलं भीष्माभिरक्षितम् पर्याप्तं त्विदमेतेषां बलं भीमाभिरक्षितम् अयनेषु च सर्वेषु यथा भागमवस्थिताः भीष्ममेवाभिरक्षन्तु भवन्तः सर्व एव हि तस्य सञ्जनयन् हर्षं कुरु वृद्धः पितामहः सिंहनादं विनद्योच्चैः शङ्खं दद्मौ प्रतापवान् ततः शङ्खाश्च भैर्यश्च पणवानकगोमुखाः सहसैवाभ्यहन्यन्त सशब्दस्तु मुलोऽभवत् ततः श्वेतैर्हयैर्युक्ते महति स्यन्दने स्थितौ माधवः पाण्डवश्चैव दिव्यौ शङ्खौ प्रदध्मतुः पाञ्चजन्यं हृषीकेशो देवदत्तं धनञ्जयः पौण्ड्रं दध्मौ महाशङ्खं भीमकर्मावृकोदरः अनन्तविजयं राजा कुन्तीपुत्रो युधिष्ठिरः नकुलः सहदेवश्च सुघोषमणिपुष्पकौ काश्यश्च परमेश्वासः शिखण्डी च महारथः धृष्टद्युम्नो विराटश्च सात्यकिश्चापराजितः द्रुपदो द्रौपदेयाश्च सर्वशः पृथ्वीपते सौभद्रश्च महाबाहुः शङ्खान् दद्मुः पृथक् पृथक् सर्वोषोधार्तराष्ट्राणां हृदयानि व्यदारयत् नभश्च पृथिवीं चैव तुमुलोऽभ्यनुनादयन् अथ व्यवस्थितान् दृष्ट्वा धार्तराष्ट्रान् कपिध्वजः प्रवृत्ते शस्त्रसम्पाते धनुरुद्यम्य पाण्डवः हृषीकेशं तदा वाक्यम् इदमाह महीपते अर्जुन उवाच सेनयोरुभयोर्मध्ये रथं स्थापय मेच्युत यावदेतान् निरीक्ष्येऽहं योद्धुकामानवस्थितान् कैर्मया सह योद्धव्यम् अस्मिन् रणसमुद्यमे योत्स्यमानानवेक्षेऽहं य एतेऽत्र समागताः धार्तराष्ट्रस्य दुर्बुद्धेर्युद्धे प्रियचिकीर्षवः सञ्जय उवाच एवमुक्तो हृषीकेशो गुडाकेशेन भारत सेनयोरुभयोर्मध्ये स्थापयित्वा रथोत्तमम् भीष्मद्रोणप्रमुखतः सर्वेषां च महीक्षिताम् उवाच पार्थ पश्यैतान् समवेतान् कुरूनिति तत्रापश्यत् स्थितान् पार्थः पितृरथ पितामहान् आचार्यान् मातुलान् भ्रातृपुत्रान् पौत्रान् सखीस्तथा श्वशुरान् सुहृदश्चैव सेनयोरुभयोरपि तान् समीक्ष्य स कौन्तेयः सर्वान् बन्धूनवस्थितान् कृपया परयाविष्टो विषीदन्निदमब्रवीत् अर्जुन उवाच दृष्ट्वेमं स्वजनं कृष्ण युयुत्सुं समुपस्थितम् सीदन्ति मम गात्राणि मुखं च परिशुष्यति वेपथुश्च शरीरे मे रोमहर्षश्च जायते गाण्डीवं स्रंसते हस्तात् त्वक्चैव परिदह्यते न च शक्नोम्यवस्थातुं भ्रमतीव च मे मनः निमित्तानि च पश्यामि विपरीतानि केशव न च श्रेयोऽनुपश्यामि हत्वा स्वजनमाहवे न काङ्क्षे विजयं कृष्ण न च राज्यं सुखानि च किं नो राज्येन गोविन्द किं भोगैर्जीवितेन वा येषामर्थे काङ्क्षितं नो राज्यं भोगाः सुखानि च त इमेव स्थिता युद्धे प्राणान् त्यक्त्वा धनानि च आचार्याः पितरः पुत्रास्तथैव च पितामहाः मातुलाः श्वशुराः पौत्राः शालाः सम्बन्धिनस्तथा एतान्न हन्तुमिच्छामि घ्नतोऽपि मधुसूदन अपि त्रैलोक्यराज्यस्य हेतोः किं नु मही कृते निहत्य धार्तराष्ट्रान्नः का प्रीतिः स्याज्जनार्दन पापमेवाश्रयेदस्मान् हत्वैतानाततायिनः तस्मान्नार्हा वयं हन्तुं धार्तराष्ट्रान् स्वबान्धवान् स्वजनं हि कथं हत्वा सुखिनः स्याम माधव यद्यप्येतेन पश्यन्ति लोभोपहतचेतसः कुलक्षयकृतं दोषं मित्रद्रोहे च पातकम् कथं न ज्ञेयमस्माभिः पापादस्मान् निवर्तितुम् कुलक्षयकृतं दोषं प्रपश्यद्भिर्जनार्दन कुलक्षये प्रणश्यन्ति कुलधर्माः सनातनाः धर्मे नष्टे कुलं कृत्स्नम् अधर्मोऽभिभवत्युत अधर्माभिभवात् कृष्ण प्रदुष्यन्ति कुलस्त्रियः स्त्रीषु दुष्टासु वार्ष्णेय जायते वर्णसङ्करः सङ्करो नरकायैव कुलघ्नानां कुलस्य च पतन्ति पितरो ह्येषां लुप्तपिण्डोदकक्रियाः दोषैरेतैः कुलघ्नानां वर्णसङ्करकारकैः उत्साध्यन्ते जातिधर्माः कुलधर्माश्च शाश्वताः उत्सन्नकुलधर्माणां मनुष्याणां जनार्दन नरके नियतं वासो भवतीत्यनुशुश्रुम अहो बत महत्पापं कर्तुं व्यवसिता वयम् यद्राज्यसुखलोभेन हन्तुं स्वजनमुद्यताः यदि मामप्रतीकारम् अशस्त्रं शस्त्रपाणयः धार्तराष्ट्रारणे हन्युस्तन्मे क्षेमतरं भवेत् सञ्जय उवाच एवमुक्त्वार्जुनः सङ्ख्ये रथोपस्थ उपाविशत् विसृज्य सशरं चापं शोकसंविघ्नमानसः ॐ तत्सदिति श्रीमद्भगवद्गीतासु उपनिषत्सु ब्रह्मविद्यायां योगशास्त्रे श्रीकृष्णार्जुनसंवादे अर्जुनविषादयोगो नाम प्रथमोऽध्यायः।
Again, welcome all the participants for today's second session on the course Life Lessons from Bhagavad Gita, Chapter 1, Observing the Armies on the Battlefield of Kurukshetra. So we just heard the recitation of this chapter. It's very important to recite these verses. As mentioned in the Padma Purana, Lord Shiva glorifies the importance of reading each chapter to Goddess Parvati. So there have been immense benefits in the past also and present and the future. So before I begin the today's presentation, we'll have a invocation. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Mena Tasme Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Mena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamsha Shri Rupam Shagrajatam Shagana Raghunatanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamsha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Taptakanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhashruti Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Mancha Kalpatarupyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivashadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So, as a brief background for those who are attending today's session and not the previous one. So, we are doing this formal course for last semester and previous semester, and before that, it was done in an informal way. So, we have been doing these programs for the past 25 years. I am a BTech from IIT Madras way back in 1992, chemical engineering. Then I did my master's in IIT Bombay, and then I joined as a senior principal scientist at the CSAR lab in Chennai. I work in industrial safety and risk analysis. I was introduced to this Bhagavad Gita when I was in school many years ago, and also during the college. And I've been trying to give this to others over the past 25 years. And so these sessions will be sharing all the presentations, videos, or quizzes through the regular email, and also if you have joined the WhatsApp groups. So we'll begin our presentation for today. So during this presentation, if you have any questions or comments related to this session, you can always put it in the chat and we will address them towards the end of the session. We lost some time due to the setup and all these things, so we hope we'll make up for that. So this chapter, can you see my screen and hear me properly? Nachiket?
Yes, Prabhu. Yes, Prabhu.
So this title, Observing the Armies on the Battlefield of Kurukshetra. So this, first we have to observe what is our problem first. When before we try to solve something. So here the problem is the armies which have assembled on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. So what is the importance of this place? Kurukshetra it's also known as Dharmakshetra, where only the truth triumphs. We have always heard this statement, truth always triumphs. So similarly, this Kurukshetra was being a place of pilgrimage. It was very likely that those who are following dharma or righteousness, they will come out victorious. So essentially, the world is also designed such a way, although we may not perceive it immediately, but it always favors dharma. And here it begins with the inquiry from Dhritarashtra. Dhritarashtra, as we know, is the father of the Kauravas. Both of them belong to the Kuru dynasty. Dhritarashtra, Pandu, and Vidura, they were all born from through Vedavyasa. And so Dhritarashtra, being blind, although he was elder, he was not entitled to the kingdom, to rule the kingdom. But because his brother Pandu was the rightful heir, but he died prematurely due to a curse. And since his sons were not grown up, so till that time that they could take up the kingdom, Dhritarashtra was put in charge. But all along, Dhritarashtra was favoring his sons Kauravas, who were not very much qualified. And by all means, they were trying to eliminate the Pandavas, firstly by trying to kill them and by putting them in a fire. And then eventually they tried to cheat them through gambling and took them the kingdom away. And when they asked for the kingdom back, they refused to give. So in this scenario, Lord Krishna also tried to bring a peaceful settlement by requesting the Kauravas to give at least 5 villages by which the Pandavas could execute their Kshatriya Dharma. But when he flatly refused, then the war was inevitable, and different countries in the world took sides of both sides. And whereas Duryodhana chose the army of Krishna, Pandavas, Arjuna, he chose Krishna to lead them. So in this scenario, background, Dhritarashtra, being blind, he could not participate in the war. So sitting in his palace, he deputed his secretary Sanjaya, who was also a disciple of Vedavyasa, to narrate to him what was happening on the battlefield. Now, Sanjaya, being a disciple of Vedavyasa, he had the ability to witness what is going on in the battlefield and report it to Dhritarashtra. So this phenomenon is already known to some people, like they have remote viewing. But this was very common previously. And anyway, we'll not go into those details. So when Sanjaya is narrating this, Dhritarashtra's first inquiry was, being his partial to his sons, he is first asking that what did his sons and the sons of Pandu do on the battlefield. Basically, he was doubtful about the outcome. And so he was very much attached to the sons. He was attached to the kingdom. And despite knowing that his sons were not on the right path, he was expecting them to come out victorious. So doubt arises when we are not on the right path. So this is an indication. Just like if you are not prepared for an exam, you're always doubtful about the result. So then in response to Dhritarashtra's inquiry, Sanjaya begins to tell that his son Duryodhana goes to his spiritual master Dronacharya and addresses him out of fear and diplomacy. So what is he fearful? Because he knows that he has no chance of victory against the Pandavas because they are led by Lord Krishna. And he is trying to be diplomatic. Diplomatic means you try to pull up someone and put down someone according to your convenience. So now in order to, he is going and instructing his own spiritual master, Dronacharya, by telling him about the strength and weakness of both the parties. And so he describes the warriors of the Pandavas army and his own army and compares them. So this comparative mentality is based on very limited knowledge because our estimation of the strength and weakness can always go wrong. And in response to this Duryodhana's apprehensions, Bhishmacharya, he starts to blow the conch shell to assure Duryodhana that he will give his full support to Duryodhana. At the same time, Bhishma wanted to indicate to Duryodhana that he had no chance of victory because he had all along opposed Dharma. So in response to the blowing of the conch shell by Bhishmacharya, the opposite party, that is the Pandavas led by Krishna and the Arjuna and all the brothers, they blew their conch shells. And when that sound was produced, it shattered the hearts of the Kauravas because these conch shells which were used by the Pandavas were divine. They are celestial conch shells. And because they had Krishna on their side, it was very clear that from the beginning that they were going to be victorious. At this juncture, Arjuna requests Lord Krishna to place his chariot in front of the opposing army so that he could find who are the supporters of Duryodhana and whom he has to fight in this battle. Now, Krishna very strategically places the chariot in front of the opposite army, and then Arjuna could see that his own near and dear ones, like the relatives, are ready to fight against him. So this overwhelms Arjuna, who becomes compassionate to not only his near and dear ones, but all to the soldiers. Now at this juncture, Arjuna decides not to fight and he gives many reasons. Firstly, he says that out of compassion for relatives and the resultant bodily symptoms, because out of compassion, he displays many bodily symptoms. And just like when we are nervous, it reflects in our body and mind functioning. So here he is, first of all, he's compassionate. Compassion means you start relating with other problems and take responsibility for that. And second reason he cites is he feels that there's no enjoyment even if he becomes victorious. Why? Because if he were to become victorious, it will be at the expense of the lives of others, and there will be no one to glorify him or with whom he can share the glory or the kingdom. And third reason is he is fearful of the sinful reactions. He knows very well that one should not kill. And in this war, it is inevitable that many will be killed, and he doesn't want to incur the reactions. And fourth reason is he feels that the family elders, when they are killed, whoever had assembled on the battle, they were family elders. And if they are killed, then the family traditions will be lost, and the remaining members of the family will not be righteous, and that will lead to many difficulties in society. So in conclusion of this chapter, Arjuna becomes grief-stricken and he decides not to fight. So now one may ask, what is it related to us? So we also have to struggle in this world. So that is our personal fight. And we may come to a situation where we are not able to execute our plans properly. So now the background is, as I told you, Dhritarashtra was blind from birth, because as you know, he was born by the union of Vedavyasa and one of the wives of Vichitravirya. So this, when she went and saw Vedavyasa, she closed her eyes and due to that, the child born was also blind. Now, not only was he physically blind, but he was also spiritually blind. He was so much attracted to his son, but that he did not hesitate to support him when he was breaking the principles. So this Pandavas, being the sons of Pandu, they were virtuous, and as I told, they were repeatedly Dhritarashtra plotted to kill them with the actually Duryodhana and others. And so now the Dhritarashtra is inquiring with Sanjaya, after my sons, Mamakaha. So this me and mine mentality, this is the origin of all our problems. When instead of saying we and ours, when we say me and mine, that begins all the problem. Like we see here, he's saying Mamakaha, my sons. Although he has to take care of the sons of Pandu also, he distinguishes his sons from the sons of Pandu. And so he addresses them as Pandava, although the Pandus are also Kauravas in one sense. So he is talking about the holy place of pilgrimage. He is very much aware that Kurukshetra is a pilgrimage place and it favors Dharma. And he is doubtful that his sons may decide not to fight under the influence of such holy places. Or he is thinking that the Pandavas will stop fighting and give up the kingdom to the Kauravas, because having assembled in a pilgrimage, they also decide not to fight. So he is inquiring from Sanjaya. Basically, whatever he wants, he puts it as a question to Sanjaya. Dharmakshetre, Kurukshetre, Samaveta, Yutsava. Yutsava means assemble to fight. Mamakaha, mine. Pandavaha, sons of Pandu, Chaiva, Kim Akurvata Sanjaya. What did they do? So this question is very significant. Is what did they do? So we know very well that they are assembled to fight. And then why is this question? So which means something is lingering in his mind, which is making ask this question. So as we said, Dhritarashtra was partial to his sons and separated his nephews, the Pandavas, although both parties belonged to the same family. Although he himself had said that they had assembled to fight, still he asked Sanjaya, what did they do? Because he was desirous that his sons get the kingdom. At any cost, he wants the kingdom to be with his sons. Because he could not rule the kingdom, at least my sons, let them rule the kingdom. Secondly, he was doubtful of the possibilities of his son's victory. Firstly, they all along had not been virtuous. So we may think that I am putting an effort and I am getting the result. But behind whatever work we do, there are higher authorities, they're known as Devatas. They give the results. So in this Dharmakshetra, it will always favor the people who are righteous. So he was doubtful about his son's victory. And thirdly, he was fearful because the holy place Kurukshetra might influence his sons to compromise. So generally a person who is the wrong side, he also doesn't want to compromise. So he thought that maybe his sons will give up fighting, and he was hopeful that The Pandavas, on the other hand, they may also give up fighting and to avoid bloodshed, and therefore peacefully the matter will be settled. But however, Krishna's plan, as we see later in the 4th chapter, is telling what is the purpose of his descent. The analogy is given just as in a paddy field, Kshetra, unnecessary weeds are taken out because they hamper the growth of the original paddy. So similarly, in the religious field of Kurukshetra, in the presence of the father of religion, Krishna, unwanted harmful weeds like Dhritarashtra's sons would be wiped out. So that is the way the nature has been designed. So although evil and good coexist, it's always that good will triumph supreme in order to teach us a lesson. So in this, the rest of the chapter, Sanjaya is describing the scene on the battlefield in response to Dhritarashtra's inquiry. So he first describes the acts of Duryodhana. So because Dhritarashtra is inquisitive, immediately in response to that, Sanjaya says what his son Duryodhana is doing there. So he is trying to assure Dhritarashtra that his son Duryodhana will not compromise. And so this comes to the 2nd to 11th verse, where we see Duryodhana's fear. When does fear arise? When we have overcome by duality. When we turn, supposing sun is there and you're in the opposite of the sun, that is in the darkness, then you become fearful. So fear arises due to duality. And Bhayam Dvitiya Viniveshatasya, that's the famous verse. Fear arises from Dvitiya, duality. Suppose you are attached to heat and you are afraid of cold. If you are attached to success, then you are afraid of failure. If you are attached to profit, you are afraid of loss. And if you are attached to health, then you are afraid of disease. So similarly, Duryodhana was attached to the kingdom and victory, and he was fearful because of his past experience. So he becomes diplomatic. Diplomatic means you play around with your strength and weaknesses. So what is he doing first? He is approaching Dronacharya, although he should be taking lessons from his teacher Dronacharya. Now he thinks he is audacious to go and instruct his own teacher. So what does he do? After seeing the army of the Pandavas, so he is all along, he is thinking about the opposite party only. He is trying to compare with the opposite party rather than trying to build his own strengths. So while describing Pandava's army, he first of all tells his teacher, behold this great army expertly arranged by your intelligent disciple, the son of Drupada. Straight away, he is pointing out the fault in his teacher, Dronacharya. The background was with Dronacharya and Drupada. They were the same Gurukula, but Drupada being a prince and Dronacharya being a Brahmana's son, they studied together, but after they graduated from studies, Drupada became a king and Dronacharya remained a Brahmana. So as we know, generally Brahmanas do not have good wealth. So under the motivation of his wife, Dronacharya went to Drupada and requested some help. He said, both of us were friends in our school days. So can you give me some monetary help? So Drupada flatly refused. So then Dronacharya, he trained Arjuna to fight Drupada and defeat him. So when Drupada was defeated by the disciple of Dronacharya, Arjuna, then he felt insulted and he performed a sacrifice through which a son was born, that is Drishtadumna, and a daughter was born, which was Draupadi, and they would be the cause for the death of Dronacharya. So Dronacharya knew very well that this was the plan of Drupada. But still, when Drupada's son Drishtadumna was sent to Dronacharya for learning the military science, he openly taught him. So that is so now Duryodhana is trying to point out the defect of Dronacharya. See that you know very well that Drishtadumna is born to kill you, but still you did not hesitate to impart lessons to him. So therefore, if you are lenient now, again in the battle, because you have a favoritism to the Pandavas, it will cost us the battle. So he first is listing all the people on the opposite side because he knows the strength of Bhima and Arjuna, he is comparing everyone on par with them, like Yudhana, Virata, Drupada, Drishtaketu, Chekitana, Kashiraja, Purujit, Kuntiboja, Shaibya, Yudamanyu, Uttamauja, Abhimanyu, son of Subhadra, and the five sons of Draupadi, Pritivindya, Shrutasena, Shrutakirti, Satanika, and Sutakarma. So all these people are Maharata. Maharata means they can fight with many people simultaneously. Ekarata, like that, there are many categories of war. He false pride makes him Can you see my screen? Because internet failed. Okay. So I hope there was not much interruption. So as I said, Duryodhana was trying to point out to Dronacharya where he failed before, and he doesn't want him to be lenient to the Pandavas. He was also trying to instigate Dronacharya that by saying that his disciples were ready to fight against him. That is, he wants to say that the Pandavas are ready to fight against Dronacharya, the teacher himself. Now he was thinking that Dronacharya might perceive that he was fearful of the Pandavas' army. Duryodhana then spoke boldly about his own army to cover his inner fears. So this is our natural tendency. When we know very well that we have a weakness, we try to cover it up with false strength. So that's what here Duryodhana is attempting to do. So he is describing his own army. The captains in my army are personalities like you, Bhishma, Karna, Kripa, Aswathama, Vikarna, and Bhurishtava, who are always victorious in battle. So he's placing his faith in the past. No matter how well the past has been, we can never predict the future or the present. So there are many other experienced heroes, well equipped with weapons, prepared to lay down their lives for my sake. So even at the cost of other people's life, he wants to become victorious. So there have been many instances in the past history. We can see that the leaders have unnecessarily sacrificed the lives of their citizens to fulfill their ego. And that's what exactly here Duryodhana is doing. For he thinks that everyone is prepared to lay down their lives for me. Tyakta Madharte means for my sake. Tyakta Jivitaha, they are willing to sacrifice my life. It's known as a kamikaze culture. Like in the World War II, the Japanese Air Force, they used to commit suicide by crashing their pilot, their plane against the opposite enemies. So he is starting comparing our army, protected by the most experienced general Bhishma, is immeasurable, aparyaptam. He is exaggerating the strength of his own army and trying to minimize the army of the Pandavas, which is protected by the less experienced Bhima. So he says, Paryaptam. All of you must protect Bhishma from all sides, standing at your respective strategic position. So according to his convenience, he is glorifying someone or putting down someone. So at this point, he thought that his greatest strength is Bhishma and Dronacharya, because he thought that when the gambling match was there and they had tried to insult Draupadi, both Dronacharya and Bhishma kept silent. So he thinks that in this war also, he has their full support, and they will continue to support him. So not only does he glorify Bhishma and Drona, he's also glorifying the other people by telling that you also have a very important role to play, and that is to protect Bhishma and Drona. Now, beginning with the 12th verse, in response to Dronacharya's fearful display, Bhishma blows his conch shell, because Bhishma is the commander-in-chief. So he made a sound like the roar of a lion, because as we know, Bhishma Deva had taken a vow that he will remain celibate and not marry. And that's what enabled Shantanu to marry and beget Vichitri Virya, through which all this lineage is coming from Dhritarashtra, Pandu, and Vidura, and all this happened because originally Bhishma was the rightful heir of the kingdom, but he refused to marry to satisfy his father, and he was given a blessing that originally his name was Devabrata, but because he took such a bold vow, he was given the name Bhishma. So he was given the benediction that he could die at his will. So being a brahmachari, when he blew the conch shell, it was like a roar of a lion, and it gave momentarily Duryodhana some joy and some confidence. But no sooner did he blow his conch shell, the opposite party, the Pandavas, they also blew their conch shells, and immediately it shattered the hearts of the Kauravas. So the blowing of the conch shells signifies the beginning of the war. In other words, the war had already commenced in this the moment they blew all the conch shell, drums, bugles, drums, and horns. So all these instruments are sounded to motivate both the armies. At that time, at the same time, Bhishma, without saying a word, blew the conch shell, informing his depressed grandson Duryodhana that he had no chance of victory. If he told directly, he would become angry only. And there's no point in instructing a fool, because he will become more angry. So instead of directly telling Duryodhana that he would not come out victorious, indirectly to the blowing of conch shell, he wanted to indicate that because the Supreme Lord Krishna was on the other side, he had no chances, but still as a matter of duty, he will do the fighting and not spare any effort. So as I said, Lord Krishna and Arjuna were stationed in the great chariot drawn by white horses. So these horses also were celestial horses, and they had the transcendental consciousness, which means they had life in them. Divyav Shankau. So the way the Pandavas and Krishna acquired their conch shell also, there are some stories, but we will not go into that. Tata Shvete Hayai Yukte, Shvete Hayai Yukte, Mahati Syandane Stitau, Madhava Pandavas Chaiva, Divyav Shankau Pradat Madhu. So that translates to Arjuna stationed on a great chariot drawn by white horses, sounded his transcendental conch shells, and the names of the conch shells blown by the various personalities are given. Normally, we don't find names for our objects, but because they, as I said, they are transcendental, Krishna blew his conch shell known as Panchajanya, and by killing a demon, he got this conch shell, and Krishna is also addressed as Rishikesha, which means he can control the senses of all the living entities. And then Dhananjaya is Arjuna because he helped his brother to get wealth for the Rajasuya sacrifice, and he blew his conch shell Devadatta. And Vrikodara means he could perform Herculean tasks and he could eat voraciously, and therefore Bhima was known as Vrikodara, and he blew his conch shell Poundra. Yudhishthira is the son of Dharmaraja, Yamraj, and so he blew his conch shell Ananta Vijaya. Nakula Sahadeva blew the Sughosha and Manipushpa. Nakula Sahadeva, the sons of Ashwini Kumaras. So here Krishna is called Rishikesha because he is the owner of all the senses. Actually, we think we are controlling our senses, but by superior arrangement only it is possible. And that is done by Lord Krishna. He directs the senses of all living entities in terms of their surrender. He directly controls the transcendental senses of Arjuna. So now Arjuna is concerned, he is dedicated his life to Krishna. So just like Krishna is driving the chariot for Arjuna, he also directs the senses of Arjuna, including the mind. Now others like Kashi Raja, Shikandi, Drishtadumna, Virata, Satyaki, Drupada, sons of Draupadi and Abhimanyu all blew their respective conches. So again, one may ask, what is the need for us to discuss all this? So in our personal situation also, we come across many powerful personalities, both those who are related to us and not related to us, and that always plays on our mind. So that's what is similarly playing on the mind of Duryodhana. He's thinking about his army and the opposite army. At this point, Sanjay informed Dhritarashtra very tactfully, Divyau Shankau, that the signs already clearly indicated the whole Kuru dynasty would be killed in that great battle, and his unlawful policy to deceive the Pandavas wasn't very laudable. Just like if you know the formulas, you can always predict in time, in place and time what is going to develop. Similarly, Sanjaya being the disciple of Vedavyasa, he could predict the future. The whole catastrophes were due to King Dhritarashtra because he encouraged the policy followed by his sons. So time and again, Dhritarashtra was hinted that he had no chance of victory for his sons. But time and again, Dhritarashtra supported his sons and they went ahead with the war, knowing well that they're going to lose the battle. Now, as I said, when the Pandavas blew their conch shells, it shattered the hearts of the Kauravas, whereas when the Kauravas blew their conch shell, it did not have any effect on the Pandavas. So why? Because they had confidence in Krishna. Because Krishna is not God only at that moment, he was God from time immemorial. They were also related to Krishna from many births. So in this birth, it was natural that they had put their faith in Krishna. And they had taken completely shelter of Krishna. They had full confidence that Krishna would protect them and they need not fear. Now, at this juncture, Arjuna took up his bow and prepared to shoot arrows after looking at the sons of Dhritarashtra drawn in military array. So this section is entitled Arjuna observes the armies. Just like Duryodhana observed the armies and came to his conclusion and his plan, Arjuna also wants to observe the armies. The battle was about to begin. Arjuna, with Hanuman's insignia on his flag, Kapidwaja, then spoke to Lord Krishna. There's a background that once Bhima went to a hill to fetch a flower for Draupadi. While he was going on the way, he found a monkey which was lying down across the path, and he asked the monkey to move away from his path. And monkey said, "I am too old now, I cannot move. You can, if you want, you can lift my tail away and then cross over." But then when Bhima tried desperately, he could not even move the tail of the monkey. Then he realized that that monkey was none other than Hanuman. So then Bhima requested a boon from Hanuman that he would help his brother Arjuna. So then Hanuman gave a promise that he would be on the flag of Arjuna and guide him. So this is another indication that Hanuman, just as he supported Rama in the battle against Ravana, Hanuman was present in the flag of Arjuna, and therefore Arjuna would come out victorious. So Arjuna said to Krishna, "O infallible one, Achyuta." Arjuna knows very well that Krishna will never fail. Achyuta means never fails in protecting his devotees. Although Krishna is the Lord, he wants to serve his devotee Arjuna, and Arjuna takes Krishna to drive his chariot and place it in front of the opposite party. Firstly, he wants to know who is assembled on the battlefield ready to fight. And secondly, he wants to know who is supporting Duryodhana. And Krishna is called Achyuta because he never fails in his affection for his devotees and takes pleasure in serving them. When we serve God, he also wants to reciprocate us by serving us. That is the beauty of devotion. Now, Krishna is also taking orders from Arjuna. Normally, whatever God says, we have to follow. But in this case, what Arjuna is telling, that Krishna is following. And now Arjuna had no desire to fight with his cousins. Basically, he was not interested in fighting because he was a noble, because he is a pure devotee, but he was forced by the obstinacy of Duryodhana, who was never agreeable to any peaceful negotiation. Arjuna wanted to make an estimate of the strength which he had to face. So at this juncture, Lord Krishna, Hrishikesha, he could understand what was going on in the mind of Arjuna and what is going to happen in future. So he places the chariot right in front of his in a strategic way, so that he could see all his elders, family members, and he will start thinking about the war before it happens. Now here Arjuna is addressed as Gudakesha. Gudaka means sleep. Arjuna had conquered sleep by his association with Krishna and by cultivating knowledge. So we can overcome ignorance by knowledge, and we can overcome sleep by being awake to spiritual consciousness. So then Krishna wanted to bring the attention of Arjuna to all the people who are assembled there. Just behold, Partha, all the Kurus assembled here. So he didn't want Arjuna to miss the important things. Krishna called Arjuna as Partha. At the same time, Krishna was trying to indicate to Arjuna that he is related to him, because he was related to the mother of Arjuna, that is Kunti, as the maternal relationship. So Krishna knew indirectly that Arjuna is going to give up fighting, and he wants to prepare him for the fight, and he points out his weakness now. Now Arjuna could see all kinds of relatives. As I said, the whole problem lies in me and mine. When we start relating everything to us and not seeing the universal global perspective, then we end up in problems. So he could see his fathers, people on the level of his fathers, that is Bhurishtava, grandfathers like Bhishma and Somadatta, teachers like Dronacharya and Kripacharya. Dronacharya and Kripacharya related to each other. And maternal uncles like Shalya and Shakuni, brothers like Duryodhana and Vikarna and others, sons like Lakshmana Kumara and others, and grandsons like sons of Lakshmana, friends like Ashwadhama, because Ashwadhama is the son of Dronacharya and they were both classmates. Fathers-in-law like Drupada.
It should be presentation. It's not in presentation.
So well-wishers like Kritavarma. Kritavarma, as we know, was from the time of Krishna's birth. So seeing all the above categories of people, Arjuna was overwhelmed by compassion. What is his compassion? He thinks that, oh, I have to kill so many of my near and dear ones who are also dependent on me. So that was the first reason due to which Arjuna didn't want to fight. Just like the doctor is there, if he's trying to do an operation of a patient, if he becomes compassionate, oh, I have to cut open his body, how can I do that? I have to give him anesthesia and make him unconscious, or what may happen during the surgery. If he thinks like that, he cannot perform any operation. So somewhat similar to that here, Arjuna had no other option but to fight, but at the same time, he's become compassionate. Now at this juncture, it is explained that Krishna had put Arjuna under illusion. What is that illusion? Sometimes we create an artificial problem. Just like the teacher is there, he's giving us problems to solve, and so that we learn the art of solving problems. So similarly, sometimes Krishna, God, puts us into a situation where we think it is a problem, but basically he's trying to test our intelligence. So Arjuna is put under this kind of an illusion that he has to kill his family members, although it was already decided by Arjuna that they will be killed. So being merciful, the Lord of all beings, Krishna, desired to deliver the universe through instructions to the dear associate Arjuna. Krishna chose Arjuna so that he can impart knowledge to the humanity. Just like if you want to communicate something to someone, you put up a drama. And in that drama, you don't choose anyone. You choose someone who's competent to play the roles with you. So similarly, Krishna chose Arjuna to enact this lesson of Bhagavad Gita on the battlefield, so that people will in the future can also benefit from these instructions. He thus made Arjuna feel that his duty to fight was against the religious principles. So what is religion? Religion means what we have to do. Normally people think religion is something what I want to do. But the religion basically means dharma or something which we have to do. Just like sugar is there, its dharma is to be sweet. Or salt is there, it has a dharma. Fire, it has dharma of heat and light. So the dharma means what we have to do, we must do. We have no option. Now, through a distortion of the philosophy of non-violence, at the same time, he is using the same scriptural directions to act against the dharma. Sometimes the lawyers are there. They twist and turn the law to against the original purpose of the law. So sometimes we create our own obstacles by confusing ourselves. Now, what is the Arjuna's reasons not to fight? So he presents 4 reasons uh, and becomes indecisive whether to fight or not. So what are the 4 reasons? First is compassion for friends and relatives. Yes, we have to try to address others' problems, but not to the extent where you become inactive, you become paralyzed. So he is too much over compassionate for his friends and relatives. Yes, we have to be compassionate, but that should not prevent us from doing what we are supposed to do. And second reason is he finds no enjoyment even if victorious. The motivating force for his fighting is, will I become victorious? Will I be happy in the process? So it's not necessary that any endeavor we do, it ultimately may not bring us happiness also. But if that is the motivating force for doing an activity, then it may prevent you from doing the very duties. And third reason is he is fearful of sinful reactions. Am I going against the dharma? Because he is very confident that if he follows dharma, he will be victorious, and if he goes against dharma, he will fail. So he is fearful of the outcome. And thirdly, he is concerned about the destruction of the family traditions, because all the elders are assembled in this battlefield. And if they are killed, the family members who are depending on them, they will not know the goal of purpose of life. And therefore, the fifth reason is indecisive. Whether I should fight or not fight, whether I'll be victorious or I'll be defeated, whether it's profit or loss. So in elaborating for the first reason, is dishtemam swajanam krishna yupsam samupastitam sidanti mama gatrani mukam cha parishishyati vepatuscha sharire me romaharshasya jayate gandivam shamsate hastat pakchaiva paridahyate nacha shaknum yavastatum brahmativa cha me manah nimittani cha pashyami viparitani keshava. So, my dear Krishna, seeing my friends and relatives present before me in such a fighting spirit, the limbs of my body are quivering. So what is going on? His mind started affecting his bodily functions also. First is the limbs of his body are quivering. My mouth is drying up. My whole body is trembling. My hairs are standing on end. My Gandiva blow is skipping from my hand. My skin is burning. I am unable to stand here any longer. I am forgetting myself. My mind is reeling. I see only causes of misfortune and opposite results of Krishna, killer of the Keshi demon. So all this is symptoms, bodily symptoms start developing, just like when we become nervous, all the body functions go in disarray. And mainly he is addressing Krishna as the killer of the Keshi demon. Why? Because Krishna can remove all the doubts and all our inhibitions. So Arjuna felt compassion for his own soldiers and even for the soldiers of the opposite party, foreseeing their imminent death. He knew that in this war, many are going to die. And so due to his soft-heartedness are the characteristics of a pure devotee. Soft-heartedness is good, but it can also be a weakness. So by Krishna's will, Arjuna is showing ignorance of his real self-interest, which is to satisfy the Supreme Lord. So if you try to satisfy many people, you will not be successful. You should know who is the main person to satisfy, and just like if you pour water to the root of a tree or put food to the stomach, the whole body becomes nourished or the whole tree becomes nourished. Similarly, we should be set our priorities in life, and he displayed impatience and weakness of mind. Excessive attachment for material things. Material things mean short-term goals. We have to always keep the long-term goals in mind and not sacrifice our for the sake of short-term goals. A man is bewildered, fear and loss of mental equilibrium. When one sees only frustration in his expectations, he thinks, why am I here? So we start wondering, what am I, where am I, what I'm supposed to do? All these doubts start coming. So Arjuna considers his victory to be a cause of lamentation. Whatever be the result, he thinks it is not going to benefit me. The second reason is he is foreseeing no enjoyment in the victory because he has no desire for the kingdom. What he will do with the kingdom when all his family members are dead and gone? Nacha shreyo nupashyami hitva swajana mahave na kankye vijayam Krishna nacha rajyam sukhanicha. I do not see how any good can come by killing my own kinsmen in the battle, nor can I, my dear Krishna, desire any victory, kingdom, or happiness. Supposing you are working for your family members and one of them passes away, then you lose motivation. You think, should I work? I have been working for so and so, but this person passed away, so why should I continue my work? So this also can become a problem for us. And so he was not interested in kingdom. So if he wins the battle, with whom he will enjoy the kingdom? No. So indirectly, Krishna wants to, Arjuna wants Krishna to understand what is his problem and solve it. Why should he work for the result? Just like some people think that God will solve all my problems. So Arjuna is thinking that why I should fight the battle? Krishna is God. Why can't he himself settle this whole matter? Sometimes people ask, Krishna could have prevented the Mahabharata war. So why was this war required? So similarly, Arjuna also thinks that why should I fight when Krishna is there? He himself can sort out the whole thing and if necessary, kill the opposite party. Now, third reason which Arjuna cites is the fear of sinful reactions. Subconsciously, he feels that he is going against, is killing his conscience. If he has to kill the opposite party, he has to act against his conscience. If he slays such aggressors, he knows very well that these people are aggressors. Aggressor means one who attacks you with weapons, who sets fire to your house, gives poison, plunders your riches, occupies your land, or kidnaps a wife. Under these circumstances, we can kill the enemy. There are many instances like Lord Rama is killing Ravana, or Ashwadhama was supposed to be killed because he attacked with the Brahmastra. So like this, we can see this Kauravas, they did all of these sinful activities, and therefore Pandavas were fully right in trying to kill them. But at the same time, Arjuna feels that there are higher principles which prevent him from killing such aggressors. For example, in this case, the aggressors are his elders, his teachers and grandparents. So in their case, how can I be strict with them? Supposing your elders you want to take action against your elders, you don't do it because you respect them, even though they are wrong. So this way, Arjuna becomes more confused. And then the fourth reason, he says they are greedy. They see no fault. Even if the other party doesn't see the mistake in killing the family members and elders, why we should do that knowingly? Supposing you're driving on the road and the other person is aggressively driving, you will be defensive. You also don't become aggressive. So similarly, he thinks that even if the opposite party doesn't see the fault in what they're doing or the outcome, why we should do like them when we know very well this is sinful and it is harmful. The fourth reason is his harmful effects of destroying the family. Kulakshaye pranashyanti kuladharma adharme bhavatyuta pradushyanti kulastya parnasankara. By the destruction of the dynasty, family traditions stop. There are some things which are learned through the family tradition. We cannot teach that in the school or in the society. We have to learn from our family elders. So those traditions will stop and there will be religion. Religion means people will not know what is right and wrong. And then the women women have a very important role, first as a mother, then or before that as a wife or the daughter. So they have a very important role, but if they become confused, then the unwanted progeny will be produced. So here there's a mention about caste. Normally we have a very wrong impression about caste. Caste means is not based on birth. It is not trying to discriminate society. It is trying to place people according to their nature and abilities. So that is the proper meaning of caste. It's not to break the society, but to unite the society. But so Arjuna says that if you break the family traditions, it causes hellish life. That is suffering. And not only for the present generation, but for even the previous generations. Because there's a Patanti Pitaro, he says, forefathers fall down. So when our elders die, they don't immediately get a next body. due to some reasons, they may not get a body, and intermediate period, they go to what is known as a Pitraloka, which is between the Yamaloka and hellish planets. So it's in limbo state. So at that time, when you offer them food and prasada, they will continue to exist there till they find a new body. So if we break that tradition, they'll have to fall down from there into hellish planets. Hell is below and Pitraloka. Yeah. So Utsantiye Jati Dharma, Kula Dharma. The community projects, and because whatever plans you make for the society, it depends on so many people. If that community structure is collapses, then the whole plan also fails. So, for example, we have make many plans. We have assigned some president, secretary, treasurer, all this. We set up the system, and supposing that whole system collapses, then the whole plan fails. So this is what is concerned, that if this Varnashrama system, according to divisions based on the qualities and activities, if that is broken, then the society will be in chaos, and then the women will lose direction, and they will indiscriminately mix with members of the opposite gender, and the subsequent population will become corrupt, and that lead to war and pestilence. So now he says, how strange is it that we are preparing to commit greatly sinful acts driven by the desire for royal enjoyment. So he is blaming himself for this situation. Although he is not the only person responsible for this war, he takes the entire blame for the war. And this is like a self even if Arjuna is disinclined to fight, the opposite party is inclined to fight and kill him. But Arjuna prefers to die in the hands without opposition. So he is willing to give up his Kshatriya dharma also. And even if the opposite party wants to kill him, he doesn't mind it. So saying this, Arjuna cast aside his bow and arrows and sat down the chariot, his mind overwhelmed with grief. So this is the situation we also put ourselves in. We make some plan, and once we comes to execute the plan, we start thinking about it and get confused. Eventually, we defeat our own plans. So this is what happens when we are not prioritizing our goals in life, or have a proper process in mind, or understand our personal situation. So here, this is the qualification for enlightenment, such a kind and soft-hearted and non-violent person. Basically, Arjuna's qualification was, he was first is soft-hearted, that one has to be soft-hearted. Otherwise, people think that if I am soft-hearted, I'll be exploited. No, if you are soft-hearted, there will be someone to come and help you, and that attracts the people, noble-minded people. So in this case, Arjuna attracts the attention of Krishna. And secondly, he was non-violent, which means he's always putting others' interest in mind before he tries to selfishly push forward his interest. So he qualifies to receive knowledge about the self, inquiring about Atma, and not. So if one is cruel and violent, his intelligence doesn't function. So this is how we end the first chapter. So any comments or questions are welcome. So this first chapter entitled Observing the Armies on the Battlefield of Kurukshetra. So whatever we discussed in this 1 hour session, we will try to cover it in the next 5 days also. If you are interested in detail, we have evening sessions from 7 to 8. You could also attend them both in English and Hindi simultaneously. So this, whatever I covered, this 46 verses of the first chapter, will be covered in 5 days with more explanation and scope for discussions. Any questions? So just to do a recap of what we.
There is a question.
Yeah.
Can you please give the link for the daily sessions? It's coming in the WhatsApp.
Yeah, we have formed some WhatsApp groups like Jignasa IIT Madras. Or if you're not getting that message, you can put your phone number or email ID here in the chat message, and we'll ensure that you get those details. I request any of our participants to share the common link on this chat message. That's the common ID and password for the Zoom sessions we are having every day. You're always welcome. So in summary, in this chapter,
There is a question. Was Duryodhan aware before itself of the fact that he would be losing the battle?
yeah, although he was aware, his intelligence is dull. Like for example, Krishna showed him his universal form. Vidura, that is his father's brother, he gave him good counsel. But all along he was so arrogant that he chose not to take such instructions. There are many people who know very well that they will fail, but still out of passion or ignorance, they go ahead. So that is the case, a typical example of Duryodhana, that although his elders were clearly indicating to him that he had no chance of victory, or he also had personally experienced many times in the past. He was many times defeated by the Pandavas. He knew very well, but still he chose to fight this battle. So that happens because when we are not intelligent, we bring our own failures.
Okay, so there is another question. Observing two sides of coin is called duality, like positive and negative side of a situation. If so, overthinking is bad.
Yes, mind, the function of the mind is to see the both sides. Yes, that is good. That's what even Arjuna is doing. Just as Duryodhana is seeing the two sides, Arjuna is also seeing the two sides. What if I fight and what if I don't fight? That is required, but at the same time, we have to exercise intelligence because we have to make a decision. Just like you are given multiple choices in a question paper. Yes, you have to look at all the choices first and then come to a right answer. Similarly, although we have to consider both sides, just like the lawyer is there, on both sides, the lawyers are arguing based on the law books. But then the judge gives his judgment by seeing the nuances of the law. He sees which is more stronger argument. Similarly, although the mind always projects both sides of the picture, we have to take a decision. And that's why we need the intelligence. And that intelligence has to be guided properly. The problem with the intelligence is the ego. That's why it's known as Maya Aparata Jnana. Intelligence becomes stolen by our ego. So one has to go beyond the false ego and then take direction from the soul or the scriptures or the spiritual master. That's what we'll see in the next chapter.
Okay, so the next question is it necessary to follow your dharma than other dharma? If so, dharma changes from one individual to other individual. How to choose right dharma?
That's what will come up later. Swadanam hi nidanam shreya paradharmo bhayavaha. It's better to do once, maybe my sister is there, I'll ask her to paste that verse and the translation. Essentially, the verse says that as long as you are doing a dharma, even faultily, it's better than doing others' duty perfectly. I'll explain that shortly. And another, it says that even if you become destroyed in performing your duty, it's better than being successful in others' duty. The first reason is when we don't do our duty and take up others' duty, first thing is you are depriving the other person from getting his result. Supposing a person is entitled for one job and you go and take his job, then obviously that person has no livelihood because you have deprived him of his job by taking up his job. And secondly, there's a need for a person with you to perform your jobs and you are not doing your job. Suppose you have been appointed for one particular job and you choose to do some other job and leave this job, then it creates a confusion. So in that sense, it's better to perform one's duty, even imperfectly, than performing others' duty perfectly. And secondly, another example is the analogy is going just like a medical shop is there. All the medicines are authorized only, but the doctor has to prescribe which medicine is meant for. You cannot take all the medicines just because they are medicines. So likewise, the scriptures will guide us as to what is our dharma. Just like you consult some books to know what you have to do or how you have to do. So scriptures are there to guide us to help us to find out what is my nature, what is my ability, and accordingly what should be my activity or dharma. Secondly, we have a spiritual master, a guide. Just like you can do the engineering or masters or PhD on your own, but you choose a guide. Similarly, in spiritual matters also, or even to execute your dharma, you have to take the guidance of the spiritual master. And apart from that, we also need some colleagues or camaraderie, call it. Like you have peer, you're doing some research, you have get it reviewed by peers. Similarly, when you're functioning as part of an organization, then you will come to know better what you're supposed to do. Initially, you try many works, but then you figure out that no, better I do this and he does this and the other person does that. So in this way, slowly we can learn what is our dharma.
Okay, so the next question is Duryodhan, Dushasan, etc. are the names given to Kauravas at their birth, or is it because of their actions or qualities they are called so?
Both. Actually, in those days, at the time of birth itself, they could study the horoscope and predict the future. And accordingly, they gave the names, and the names exactly tallied with their characteristics. Duryodhana, Suyodhana is also known as Suyodhana, and Dushasan. So they knew beforehand that this person will have this quality traits and this kind of activities he'll perform. And accordingly, they gave the names. And not only that, they lived up to their names. Uh, and we still remember them for that, their nefarious activities.
The next question is, King Drupada and his son fought from opposite sides.
I don't think so, because here he's actually estimating both the sides. Although it is said the names have been given, he's talking about the people on both sides. His side as well, opposite side. And Drupada obviously must have been the opposite side, and his Drupada's son, Dhrishtadumna, was the commander-in-chief of the Pandavas. The Pandavas are concerned, the commander-in-chief never changed. Throughout the battle, he was the same person. But on the Kaurava side, they had to change the commander-in-chief constantly because each one was dying. Okay, if there are no further questions, thank you all for your patient hearing. And so, have you shared the link for the daily sessions? Yes. So we'll meet again next Saturday for the second chapter, but it's a very long chapter, so we'll break it into 2 sessions. So maybe up to halfway we'll cover the next Saturday, and the next Saturday after that we'll cover the remaining of the second chapter. So we'll try to start a few minutes before the scheduled time of 6:30, and we'll recite the verses also. Thank you once again.
If we are doing our own path, we are always pulled away these days, saying to see and learn from who is already in the field and get to safer side.
That is the problem actually. That is the modern mentality, that we easily want to take sides. We don't think it over properly, whether it's really required. Should I change the side? That's a bit unfortunate situation. Supposing you see 10 people are on one side and you are on the other side, only one, you are alone, or you blindly want to go to the other side. So that is not the way. If you go to some foreign university, you see there may be just 1 or 2 students attending a course. They don't mind. The teacher also doesn't mind to teach to 1 or 2 students, and the student also doesn't mind to be alone in the class. But maybe just a offhand remark I'm making. Our tendency is we want to see which is the majority, and we want to be on the majority side, never on the minority. But need not be. Because as we can see here, in one sense, the Pandavas, they are the minority, because they were only 5 brothers, and the Kauravas were 100 brothers. But nevertheless, they were not dharmic. So the strength really doesn't matter. The number doesn't matter. Whether you are rightful, that is more important. Does it answer the question? Any other? Okay.
Done.
Right.